Hello and welcome to the Give Me the Remote podcast. It's episode 53. And John's already laughing at me flubbing the intro. It's Monday the 28th of October. And I'm
2019!
2019!
Hey!
After a perfect run for weeks.
2 weeks.
Feels longer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Sheridan and I'm joined in the pod by John.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be in your ears again. So, what do we do? What is this podcast about, Sheridan? What's a new listener going to get?
A new listener will get reviews on shows and movies that are new to streaming services or sometimes some old faves or just slightly out of date.
Things we've been watching lately and that you don't have to leave the house to watch.
That's right.
Yeah, because who wants to do that anymore?
No one wants to leave the house ever.
Okay, what have we got first tonight?
I think we should review Yesterday.
When did you write that?
I didn't write it. Paul McCartney wrote it. The Beatles.
Who?
Wow, this is just like a Saturday afternoon matinee mega mix of talent, isn't it?
This is almost the perfect movie.
In a challenging and not particularly great sort of way. Unchallenging and not
I was going
particularly...
to say, it wasn't particularly
Sorry,
challenging.
I misspoke. And unchallenging and not particularly... If you're going to make the perfect movie that no one will actually care about in 5 years' time, but is perfect in every particular of its creation, that's this movie.
You can take anybody on the planet, probably, to see this film, and they'll probably get it and enjoy it.
Anyone over the age of 20, I'd say. But anyway, it is awesome.
So what's the premise of the show or the movie?
So the premise is you've got a Indian folk singer, and that's a beautiful touch of multicultural Britain that's done extremely well. And his family are beautifully integrated into their seaside town community as well. Who is playing to empty tents, and anyone who's hung around the music scene for more than 5 minutes will recognise it completely. He's got a small band of friends who like his music. He's got a devoted female friend who also manages him, who really believes in his songs, and pretty much no one else is quite getting what he's throwing down. Not because he's bad, but just because he's not quite sensational.
Yeah, everything's just a little bit shy of being really good.
Yeah, but even... It makes the point well that in this day and age, simply being an adequate singer-songwriter isn't enough to grab anyone's attention.
Yeah.
And then all the lights in the world go out. There's some sort of supernatural event. He gets hit by a bus, and this is all on the trailer, so it's no spoilers. And he wakes up being what he thinks the only person in the world who remembers the Beatles, and a whole bunch of other things. There's lots of fun stuff that he Googles. Something will come up in conversation. No one will know what he's talking about, and then he Googles it, and it's something else. So yeah,
And so then he basically just
as a singer-songwriter who can remember most of the Beatles songs, he starts performing Beatles songs, and of course, because Lennon and McCartney are one of the greatest songwriting combinations certainly of the 20th century.
Yeah.
Almost, I think it's not controversial to say the greatest songwriting combination.
Maybe sorry, my computer.
Can you just silence that, Sheridan? Just turn off the volume completely.
Maybe Elton John and that other dude?
Yes, Elton John, and we really should remember him because we watched the movie about him, and yeah, that's eluding me this second. And the other one I would say possibly is Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber. Interestingly, they're all English.
What about the Finn brothers?
Not quite in the same league, but certainly honourable mentions.
Anyway, I really liked the two lead actors in this film.
Yeah, they're beautifully played. They're who are the actors, Sheridan?
Hamish Patel, who plays the lead character, and appears to have been in very little. Well, when I say little, he basically was in EastEnders.
Which is kind of like the Neighbours of Britain, yeah.
Yeah, now basically made this film, and he's probably going to be a big star.
Mm.
So been in nothing. Lily James plays the other character. She was in Baby Driver.
Ooh,
Mamma Mia.
She's hanging out with a cool crowd, isn't she?
She's already been in a few
Yeah.
kind of big.
And I would say, I mean, it's Richard Curtis, who Four Weddings and a Funeral, of course, is his biggest thing. But any number of British rom-coms of the last 25 years have had the Richard Curtis stamp on them. And Danny Boyle, whose greatest work is Trainspotting, but has just really worked out a really good career of making interesting films that he cares about, and you've got to respect the man for that.
Yeah, he's a good filmmaker.
I wouldn't say he's like he was young and on fire when he made Trainspotting, and his stuff since then has not been young and on fire.
No,
but that's okay because Trainspotting as a young and on fire movie is probably not been exceeded since.
He's good at making crowd pleasers, I think. Whether like his audience is young or he knows how to please a crowd.
Yeah. Anyway, it's funny because the dramatic tension that builds up in the movie that we're not going to spoil. I'll spoil it very slightly by saying it turns out to not actually be the dramatic tension you think it is. But it's kind of cool and fun the way they play with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel almost bad for spoiling that. But
you can't.
I'm not gonna do any more.
Stop it.
Stop it.
Ed
Anything else?
Sheeran's also in the film.
And is just what you expect Ed Sheeran to be, which is a bit of a twat and kind of annoying, but still kind of decent and okay.
Ed Sheeran's sort of developing just a career of playing himself in film and TV.
And he's really flat and dull when he plays
though.
himself, but he's really good at being flat and dull. I actually thought when they did the songwriting competition in Moscow that Ed Sheeran's song
should have beat
was the better song.
Then Let It Be.
And it wasn't Let It Be. It was one of the lesser known Beatles songs that got pushed out, and I actually thought Ed Sheeran's song was really good. I'm sure it was deliberately done as Ed Sheeran's song was actually really good. But yeah, so Ed Sheeran's in it, and it's just a beautiful story. It gives us Beatles nostalgia, and what's better in the world than Beatles nostalgia? Because fundamentally, they're just some of the most beautiful, touching, feel-good songs written in the last 100 years in the modern era of... and they kind of define the modern era of music. They define multiple genres with their music. A real testament to the British art college system, which gave lots of lower class people the education and intellectual toolkits to create world-defining art, which has been dismembered under conservative governments in the last 30 years to the impoverishment of the whole British nation. I mean, just think
the structure is not currently in existence to create another Beatles, that's for sure.
Yeah, Beatles, or even the Rolling Stones and David Bowie and that whole generation of young lower working class people who had the opportunity to go to art schools.
Yeah. He's probably not as good of a singer as John and Paul, though.
John and Paul weren't great singers, technically. One thing and they make it's so obvious in this whole thing that he lacks the band.
Yes,
trying to do these songs solo without, for all that Ringo gets mocked a lot, Ringo was actually, and I've spoken to a lot of drummers about this, Ringo Starr's ability to technically hold the songs together with his rhythms was extremely good. Ringo was a very good drummer, for all that Paul joked that he wasn't the third best drummer in the Beatles.
Astonishingly, this film cost $26 million to make and took in a box office of $148 million.
The only thing that astonishes me with that is that it only took in $148 million, but I reckon...
But that's just box office.
I reckon it is going to murder digital release.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to go see it at the movies. It wasn't... The premise was cute. We loved the trailer, and we were like, we're not going to leave the house for that.
Yeah, true.
But my God, we watched it the first second it was available on digital.
I'd probably watch it again.
Yeah. I reckon it'd just be a great rainy day film.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly because you just want to hear the songs in some sort of setting. Could have done with a little more Yellow Submarine.
Yes. And maybe a bit more Sgt. Pepper's, that whole
Sgt.
era.
Pepper's, White, yeah.
What are you giving it? Oh, sorry, were you going to add something?
Not really. I feel we should talk more about it, but fundamentally we've been banging on for our requisite 10 minutes, and it's just...
Oh, you know who's really good in it?
Mhm.
Who I've completely forgot. There's basically only 4 actors, main characters.
Well, there's
in the
Rocky,
show.
who's a real staple of English sitcoms.
Is Kate McKinnon, who plays the awful agent.
Okay.
She's from Saturday Night Live, I think. And
Is she?
that's-
She
she's
plays
from Ghostbusters.
She plays the
and-
part beautifully.
Anyway, she's...
And it's with so much honesty, and that's what's lovely. She's like, I'm going to totally destroy you. Do you want it?
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, I want it.
She's just a really good comedic actress.
Yeah. I'd just say, this role, she's not on a comedy turn. I mean, she's delivering some lines deadpan, but I would say it's just good acting.
It is funny. I mean, it's a funny movie. There's a lot of jokes in it.
Yeah, but they're all very Richard Curtis jokes, and they're kind of soft-pedaled, and but some of its depiction of modernity of 20-something or early 30-something British life, working in warehouse stores to pay the bills to try and chase your dreams.
They are in their 20s, honey. I hate to tell you.
Sorry?
They're in their 20s.
Some of their friends are starting to get their lives together, though. But anyway, a lot of it rang very true.
Yeah, it did.
And considering that Danny Boyle and Richard Curtis are getting on, I reckon that was either they hired some good junior writers or they spent a bit of time researching things. But it rang very true to life for all of its fantastical premise, and I think that's a mark of something really good.
Yeah, and they managed to make Manchester look like a place you'd want to visit.
Liverpool.
Oh, Liverpool, sorry. A place you'd want to visit.
Yeah, the Liverpool Tourism Authority.
I
hope they paid them a lot. Because I never, ever wanted to go to Liverpool at all, and now I kind of do. So stars.
What are you going?
I'm going to give it 4.5. And there's basically absolutely nothing wrong with it, but I just feel that to be a 5-star, you have to take a few more risks. And this movie takes no risks at all. It's a clever premise, it's beautifully executed, it's well acted, it's a very solid 4.5 stars, but it takes no risks.
Well, I mean, the risk is that the concept is completely stupid.
That's not a risk, though. It doesn't challenge my view of the world. It doesn't change the way I feel about anything, because I love the Beatles before and I love the Beatles now, and loving the Beatles is not an exceptional or controversial viewpoint.
True. Well, I'm going to give it 5 stars.
Is that just because you don't do halves, or
I don't do halves.
Yeah.
Really backed myself into a corner on that one.
Fair enough. So what's next?
I feel a bit awful switching to this now.
Okay.
But unbelievable.
No signs of forced entry. Doors and windows were locked. No DNA. Not a single neighbor saw or heard a thing.
He brought a blindfold, but nothing to tie her with. Would a shoelace even hold her?
Yep. Now this is programming that takes risks.
Yes. Yep.
It is not a feel-good story, however.
No, it is not.
Although I would say it is extremely satisfying by the end.
Yeah, I wasn't that satisfied. I mean, but that's just because to me, there's nothing about the show, but because it actually showed what... Well, we should talk about what it's about before.
Okay, so it's about... it's basically a police procedural in which the police doing the procedures are almost entirely female police investigating rape cases.
So it's based on, and this is not giving anything away, I don't think, because it resolves itself. Well, not resolves itself, but it comes out by the second episode. Mary Adler is a troubled teen who lives in, I guess, what you'd call maybe a halfway house.
Supported accommodation.
Yeah, supported accommodation. And someone breaks into her house and rapes her. She makes a report to the police and then later tells the police that it was a lie, that she made it up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of complicated things that go on with her foster mothers having a crisis of confidence.
Yeah. So anyway, it actually is based on a true story.
Yeah.
she's the real person who wrote a book. But then it follows the two police detectives played by Toni Collette and Merritt Weaver, who's been in quite a few things actually that I had forgotten about.
Merritt Weaver in this, I found her character very grating and annoying, but I found it grating and annoying in an entirely believable and entirely justifiable
I
way.
actually quite liked her.
No, but yeah, she was very good, and I think we need more characters like that on screen. I also think Toni Collette, this is, in my view, the best role she's ever done, and she's done a lot of good roles. And if this is Toni Collette's legacy, then I think she'd be very proud.
She's a really good actor who picks really interesting roles.
Yeah.
And difficult
United
roles.
States of Tara was a weird show as well, in that I never enjoyed watching United States of Tara, but I kept watching it.
Yeah.
Because it was very challenging and confronting. I actually think she's better in this than she was in Tara, although she was good in Tara as well. So good on Toni Collette for doing tough stuff well.
So yeah, it follows these two female detectives as they try and find a serial rapist. It's obviously, it is a very challenging show. There's not a lot of violence, or there is no gratuitous rape scenes, which
is well handled. Yeah.
Because they.
Most of that stuff is from the victim's point of views.
Yeah, it's very
which is powerful
snippets.
Without being lascivious.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very fine tightrope to walk that they actually do really, really well.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable to watch, and it kind of you as a man you feel a bit sad about being a man and the things other men do, and let's be honest, it's disturbing because we can feel our own worst sides sometimes watching these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
it's not just.
I'm not saying I've ever done any of that.
Well, I was going to
stuff.
say it's not just about the rapist, but it's about how the police handle the victims.
It's mostly about systemic failure.
Yeah.
Because
it's a systemic failure from men not being able to,
and some women.
Even
some women fail as well.
Some women, true. But as a result of sexism.
I don't think the failure by the women in it is entirely the result of sexism. I don't think the failure of all the men is entirely the result of sexism either. I think what is interesting in this is the picture that it paints, where good people acting with good intentions, which is the case of pretty much everyone in this except the rapist, who is a very minor character in this.
Yeah.
Is acting out of good intentions to the best of their ability and still delivering terrible outcomes because the system they're working in which is basically our society when I say the system, is inclining them to doing bad things. And I think that is part of what makes this so absolutely fascinating. And they really do explore that as it comes to a resolution, which takes pretty much the last 2 episodes of it. It's about 2 hours of just doing resolution aftermath, which I still found really interesting and really gripping.
Story. By the way, too, I do want to say for anyone thinking about watching this, this isn't some sort of man-hating show. There are a lot of men in the show that are actually fundamentally good. For example, the intern. And
Marie's foster father.
Yes.
Comes across really well. Some of the husbands of the detectives are good dudes who actually stand up to, in one case, bullying by his partner, trying to get him to do a bad thing for good reasons. That's a really interesting interaction.
One of the things, though, that, I don't know if you would notice this, but all of the male characters are, especially the good ones, are on the periphery. For example,
all male characters on the periphery. This is a female story. I don't know what its Bechdel score is, but it's got to be one of the highest.
It's unheard of, really, to watch a police procedural and have all of the lead police and senior police be women.
Yep.
And the only dude in the police team is the intern.
Yeah. There is an FBI investigator who does some high-level stuff.
True, you're right.
But it's very much it is a woman's story driven by women, and it is a really great story.
The the lead FBI agent is black. So it's actually there's not
Still a minority, I guess. But I'm choose to be colourblind on that. To be honest, I just think that it's really great to see a fully formed story that isn't just being tokenistic in its presentation of women. It's just there don't need to be dudes at the centre of the story. We've got plenty of stories with dudes at the centre of them.
Yeah.
This one doesn't have it, and it's still a really well told story.
Yeah, and I think you probably took a bit of convincing from me to watch it.
Well, it just to make me feel bad about myself. But I would say, dudes out there who like good drama, this is just a good story, so just watch it because it's a good story.
Yeah, and it's well acted, really well put together.
It will make you rethink how you view parts of the world, and that is a good thing to re-examine.
Yeah. And definitely too about the American justice system.
We've sort
or
of...
all justice systems.
I was going to
really.
say, our justice system is not great either.
I know, it's just, there are unique aspects to the American justice system that we don't have.
Yeah.
We still have a lot of crappiness.
Yeah.
In fact, heaps and heaps of crappiness.
Yeah.
What are you going to give it?
5 stars.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 5 stars as well.
And the difference between this and yesterday is, as I mentioned, this takes real risks, lots and lots of real risks, and it sticks them. And you've got to. That's the difference between 4.5 and 5 stars to me, I guess.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Watchmen.
People who wear masks are driven by trauma. They're obsessed with justice because of some injustice they suffered. Ergo, the mask. It hides the pain.
I wear the mask to protect myself.
Right. From the pain.
Not the movie, but the TV show.
Yeah.
We're breaking from tradition and reviewing a single episode.
And we're doing that for a very good reason.
Because it sucks. No.
So this is HBO's attempt to build itself a new Game of Thrones. And so far, they are really nailing it. It's early days. It's really early days. But so if you've never read Watchmen or watched the movie Watchmen, and the movie Watchmen gets a lot of bad press, but I actually think it was quite well done as a standalone thing.
It's very close to the graphic novel as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't put the same level of content in.
Oddly enough, for all that everyone says, oh, Watchmen was a terrible movie, it launched Zack Snyder's career. And if that didn't do his career any harm, it wasn't as bad as some people make out. But it's called Watchmen, but it's not trying to recapitulate the graphic novel Watchmen, which is Dave Gibbon and Alan Moore's masterpiece. By the way, Alan Moore is trapped in a terrible, terrible deal with the comic book publisher when the rights are meant to revert to him when Watchmen, the graphic novel, goes out of print. And so that's why they're always releasing a tweaked re-release to keep it in print so he doesn't get it back.
Oh, that's awful.
And I bought one of those re-releases. I'm like, oh no, I'm a terrible person.
Yeah, right. He'll probably
s-
never go out of print.
Not now, yeah.
Well, not in his lifetime, when I say never. I mean, I'm sure 20,
Eventually,
50.
yeah.
I don't know.
It's a little too tightly topical. I don't think once people don't remember Richard Nixon's name, they're going to feel the same resonance to Watchmen. But people are going to remember Nixon's name for quite some time, I suspect. Anyway, this Watchmen, they're not recapitulating the graphic novel. They're not recapitulating the movie. They have moved the whole story on by about 20 years in the same world.
Which is smart, I think. Gives them a lot more to play with.
I think it's so great they've done that. Dave Gibbon is still heavily involved. He's all over the credits. Yeah. And it's interesting watching responses to this coming out of the US because to me this was a really good story tackling some really unpleasant things about race relations. It's set in the US, so in the US, but I think that are more broadly applicable. And that it's and so I just saw that really good story tackling hard stuff about race relations, lynchings.
It's very, very topical at the moment with what's happening in Trump America.
Yeah, and Where am I trying to go with this? You got anything to say
Well,
right
it's just doing something that you actually don't see that often, which is actually provide an in-depth, difficult narrative and critique on race in society.
now? Okay, sorry. I remember where I was going here, which is that, to me, really good story tackling really tough stuff that I do
Yeah.
feel has been undertold. To African Americans that I've seen talking about it, it's much more important to them that they're actually seeing these stories.
Oh, for sure.
So, and I salute and support them in that.
Amazing cast. Regina King, who is probably likely to be a very significant character throughout.
She is
Really
kick-ass.
Jeez. It's got some big names in it. Don Johnson, Jeremy Irons, Louis Gossett Jr.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what's coming with Jeremy Irons. That was somewhat underdeveloped in episode 1.
Really well shot. Like all the scenes from the 1920s were
A lot of money
really
spent on
cool.
it. Yeah, it's showing its dollars. I would say, though, the thing you've got to be really careful watching this is you have to pay attention.
I do. I actually want to rewatch the first episode, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. You're going to have to pay so
well,
much.
mainly too, because when I've put it on, I was like, this could go either way. And about 25 minutes in, I was like, holy crap, this is awesome. I really should have been paying more attention.
Yeah, but so there'll be background noise on the radio that you have to be paying attention to. That's where your exposition's coming from.
Yeah.
Weird little hints, weird little subtleties, like, things being displayed on dashboards while people are driving down the road. It's informationally dense. It's got a lot going on. So we've only watched episode 1. Episode 2 is out as we speak, and we're going to watch that later tonight. So hopefully it doesn't let us down. But I have seen reviews from media who've had advanced copies up to episode 9, and they're still wildly positive. So I'm willing to go with that. I think
It's got 97% on Rotten Tomatoes at the moment.
Yeah, wow. That'll be totally based on first episode. Oh no,
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes will be advanced screeners too, won't it?
I'd say it would be. Most people seem to have reviewed episode 1 to 3.
Yeah, right. Cool. So our point is, Watchmen.
I don't want to rate it yet. Are we cool with not rating it?
I will rate episode 1
What are you going to rate it?
as episode. I'm not done yet. I would say if you're unfamiliar with the world of Watchmen, you don't need to read the graphic novel. But if you like reading graphic novels, you read Watchmen. So let's just put that to one side.
If you're thinking of getting into graphic novels, read Watchmen.
I wouldn't say Watchmen would be the best one to start with, to be honest.
I'm not into graphic novels, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Like I've probably read 10 graphic novels, less than 10 graphic novels in my whole life, and I would actually say Watchmen is probably my favourite one.
Yeah. Anywho, so there's that if you're thinking about getting into graphic novels. But I would say watching the movie, except for it lacks the squid references, which are actually prominent in episode 1. This will all make sense to you later, trust me. Look, watch the movie first, because there's stuff like they're throwing references to Rorschach in the masks that the bad guys are wearing. And I'm very unhappy at the moment that he's being taken up as an icon by the bad guys, but I'm hoping there'll be some explanation of that. Because Rorschach from Watchmen, the graphic novel, and the movie is an unbelievably beautiful character, and I say that because he's so ugly, so harsh, so brittle, but so unrelentingly devoted to trying to do the right thing. And fundamentally the most decent and human of all the characters by the end of Watchmen. And I think that I'm really hoping they come up for some reason why he's being used as a symbol for the bad guys.
Yeah.
But it's a rich world that has these things in it. I'm gonna give this 5 stars as a first episode of a series.
I'm going to give it 4 stars.
Oh, okay. What's your docking star for?
Just want to leave a bit of room.
Okay. So nothing in particular.
Yeah, I just want to see where things go.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay then, folks, well, we are at the end of this podcast. Thank you very much for listening with us once again, and if you've got anything you'd like to tell us, do please email gmtrpodcast@gmail.com or leave a comment on the social medias, be it Facebook or Twitter, or you can even comment on the Libsyn website where we host this podcast, but chances are you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, and if you are, do please give us 5 stars. Not 4, not 3. 5 stars, that's what we need. And if you want to leave a lengthy review, there's already some quite erudite ones on there, and it would be lovely to see your thoughts. So thank you very much, and we will see you next week.
Night, folks.